I started coming to New Orleans about 30 years ago. In fact, I had one of my last really bad drinking binges here. And years later, in the late 80s, I was fortunate enough to get hired to do the artwork for the Neville Brothers album cover for Yellow Moon. And because of that, when that album came out, all of these New Yorkers went looking around for my work. And I had a career. And have never done anything other than make art for a living since. So I've always kind of felt like I owed New Orleans my livelihood, and this became my other city. I'm a lifelong Chicagoan. I have attempted to leave that place a couple times, but I've never been able to. It's the center of my compass, but New Orleans is my other city. And in a way, it's the flip side of Chicago. Everything that's not okay in Chicago is perfectly fine in New Orleans. You can walk around the streets drinking all night in New Orleans, and everybody is fine with it. You can sleep till noon in New Orleans, and nobody gets in your shit about it. I have 100 friends down here, and not one of them has a job. They have their work. They paint, they sing, they write, they sculpt, they perform poetry, but nobody punches in. And I've always thought New Orleans was our covenant with the old world. It is Spain and France and the Caribbean preserved in architectural amber and etched into the faces of people you walk by down here every day. New Orleans was an old city the day after it became a city. You know, the only thing here in 1703 was a bunch of Anglican vicars and a bunch of hookers. And the Anglican vicars were shocked I say, to discover what they described as women given to lewdness. And they wanted to get rid of the hookers, and luckily the pirates had the good sense to kill these assholes and keep the hookers and provide, who provided a necessary service for the fur trappers and horny Spanish sailors. So when you try to figure out whose city New Orleans is, it's this way station of travelers and transients and poets and gypsies and ghosts and dreamers. There's this wonderful essay by Andrei Cardrescu called Human Remedies Against the Devil, and where he points out that New Orleans is one of those cities that the dead far outnumber the living. So you have this chummy relationship with the spirit world, and hence the past. This place is a ghost story, and its history never really erases itself like the rest of America. The rest of America, they tear down old buildings and they put up strip malls, and that doesn't happen here. Nature's obviously taken much away from New Orleans, but the citizens of New Orleans don't ever take that away from themselves. There's this kind of atavistic presence that walks hand in hand with the people of the city.
Right.
That is the history of the city. When you hear, when you walk through the cemetery, St. Louis number 1 and St. Louis number 2, and you'll look at the gravestones and you'll see yellow fever, cholera. And then every once in a while on a gravestone you'll see the word honor, and realize that those were duels. Those were men walked out into a field, took 10 steps from each other and shot each other, which means this fool got his ass dead out of pride. So you're very aware of the ghosts of the French, the Spanish, the Confederacy, the Jim Crow You know, all of that, Congo Square, I mean, all of that has traveled through New Orleans. I had a conversation with Keith Calhoun about the beginning of jazz, and we kind of agreed to disagree. In every account I've ever read, it started in the whorehouses of Storyville, yeah, with Buddy Bolden. And Keith thinks that, and probably rightly so, that it actually started in Congo Square. That all of the music and beats and dance from people of color found its way to the ears of the musicians who played in said whorehouses in Storyville. And one day Buddy Bolden picked up his cornet and something other came out of the other end of it. Something unlike himself, something he never played or thought about before, but he'd heard it before. Keith and I are not sure where, but it started in New Orleans. The one real American art form started here. And then it went to the young Louis Armstrong and the young Jelly Roll Morton, and on and on and on. And every time Wynton Marsalis picks up his horn or Harry Connick plays the piano, those echoes are ever present. So this narrative chain of art and music and poetry that started in New Orleans 4 centuries ago continues. And when you realize that and you start coming here, you want to be part of that narrative. You want to be part of embroidering and burnishing that history. Once you come here, it ruins you for anywhere else. Before Katrina, I didn't really know anybody down here who actually voted. It's like, because it's not America here. This place is a reliquary of otherness, and that is so what I love about it. I know people who said, well, I've been to Buenos Aires, and it's like that. And I've been to the Latin Quarter in Paris, and it's like that. And I've been to parts of Venice, and it's like that. But it isn't like any of them. It is only like itself. And it's the only place in America that's like that. There are 3 magical cities in this country: New York, Chicago, and New Orleans. And the rest of it's fucking Cleveland. The rest of it's the people who gave us George Bush, After the storm, I've been working on another series of books about the history of my city of Chicago, and I got involved in a lot of fundraising for Katrina relief and things like that, but I didn't. It wasn't in my heart to come here yet, and I didn't get here for at least a year afterwards, because there was something heartbreaking. It was like somebody telling you that one of your relatives had a terminal illness. And then I got here, and I thought, well, what are they talking about? Nobody's surrendered here. Nobody's given up. The creative community is still going full force. Paul Chan and Ann Pasternak in Creative Time brought a production of Waiting for Godot down to the lower Ninth and Gentilly a little over a year ago. And I would run into people who had never seen a play before, who had never been in a theater, who had never bought a ticket to a play. And they walked away from that experience literally full of light, illuminated. And what we find out, through Prospect One and efforts like this, is that the making of art, the creative impulse of the city, is what lifts people above the furious loss. And it is what will save this place. I started keeping my diary about New Orleans after my first trip back here, about 18 months ago. And this is before that I knew that I was going to be in Prospect One. I wanted to make a book about New Orleans, and I started walking the streets every night with my iPod blasting in my ears and just watching. And I learned something really vital, and that was how to listen. The diary is comprised of what other people from here have taught me, and the lesson that the day teaches me when I spend a day in New Orleans. No 2 days are alike. It's one of those cities that is like a great piece of art, and a great piece of art does one thing: it keeps beginning. And that's what New Orleans does. You know, oftentimes I'll be talking to people who've been here their whole lives, and they stop for a minute and they break into tears, and the after effects of Katrina are still very much with them. And this past weekend, with the echo of that with Gustav, that's still kind of very much on their mind. My friend Paul Sanchez, the singer, he says that you know, down here we always been crazy, but now we've gone mad. And when I first started coming back here, it was like nothing so much as visiting a country that had lost a war. And if you've ever done that, you know that there is a kind of certain dispiritedness. But also in New Orleans, you also noticed that there was a palpable kind of politicized anger that I'd never noticed here before. And there was like no surrender in anybody. You know, a great many people left and are not going to come back. But the people that stayed, there's no quit in them. My friends, John Boutte and Paul Sanchez, you know, after Katrina, found themselves in you know, really the downside of advantage and financially, but they still went out and played benefits for their fellow citizens that had less. And the efforts of the creative community in this city were heroic. And it was kind of my road to Damascus moment. One of the trips I came here, at the same time the big art fairs in Miami were going on, and it smacked me right in the middle of the forehead. It's like making art has to be about something other than hustling the endless product. About getting in this magazine or this grant or that grant or all that other horse shit. Or servicing, constantly servicing the market. You know, I mean, young artists now want to talk about you know, how to insert themselves into the market, and they've forgotten that their work has to be about something. I was so fortunate to be here and in a place where the creative spirit is kind of the difference between life and death. You know, I mean, what I see Prospect One is this amazing collection of talismans of hope. You know, I think that this biennial traffics in human hope. It's to bring people back to this place and revitalize them and show them why it is so utterly necessary. I can think of 100 unnecessary cities, you know. I mean, we have a country full of them, you know. But New Orleans is our link with something of the spirit and something of the human soul. And that's what I try to get in each diary entry. Because when I start each day here, I really don't know what's going to happen. You know, my mission was to write this book that was kind of a long love letter to the city. And every day I step out onto you know, Charter Street here. It's like a kid looking through the window of a candy store, you know, and all the stuff he wants. My friend, the movie director John McNaughton, often makes these trips with me. And he says, you know, Chicago's my wife, but New Orleans is my mistress. And there's something to that, you know. There's just this thing where I absolutely feel at home here, you know, and thankfully it's gotten me out of living in the art world. You know, there's so much more at stake here. There is so much more in the balance of creativity and that question, and just what creativity and art making means to a culture. You know, I contend that it's the thing that is holding New Orleans together right now. Because there's more than a certainly peculiar political landscape here. You know, I'm from Chicago, and we expect a certain amount of political chicanery. You know, it's a given. You know, any big city, there's a necessary amount of graft to happen to make it all work, to make sure the snow gets shoveled and the garbage gets picked up. But New Orleans, you got a collection of dildos running this city that it's just amazing. You know, I mean, I have seen some of the political action in this city, and it's appalling. And luckily, the spirit of the people just kind of outweighs that. So it's a very interesting place. I mean, I always think of it as the other side of the coin from Chicago, but in many ways, it's so much like Chicago. I mean, the primary language of both of these cities is music. And that's what I loved about New Orleans. First time I came here, everywhere I would walk in the city, I would hear music somewhere. It was the city that came with a soundtrack, you know. I remember the first night I ever walked down Frenchmen Street, you know, and ran into Snooks Eaglin, and he's an older man now, but he's still always trying to meet girls, you know, 20-year-old girls, you know, girls from Tulane, you know, he's like 80, you know, it's like, I decided when I'm 85, I'd like to be named in a paternity suit, you know, it's like, that's kind of there's just this liberated kind of feel of life in New Orleans, you know. You know, years ago, Armistead Maupin wrote Tales of the City about San Francisco, you know, and nobody's really written the Tales of New Orleans right now, but, you know, it's a city where oddballs like me fit in, you know. I can breathe easy here. I can be, you know, exactly who I am here. I only wish that I'd felt that comfort in my own city, because I never have, you know. But New Orleans, the minute you're here, if you are a creative spirit, you are a family. You are embraced. You are a person of value. And it's in everything here. It's in, you know, having a meal here isn't, you know, in Chicago we have lunch and 45 minutes later it's over and we go back to work, you know. Not New Orleans. New Orleans, first of all, it's going to take the waiter 15, 20 minutes to get to you, because he's having conversations. And then your guests, if they're New Orleanians, they eat slowly. They relish each bite. They relish each moment. They've been known to drink a little at lunch here, you know, and then after lunch there's dessert, and lunch takes about 4 hours here, you know. It takes a long time, you know. And what I learned from this place was to slow down. That you get one stab at life, and you're dead for a long time. Because as Mr. Codrescu wrote, we are surrounded by the dead. They far outnumber us here. So we shouldn't be in any huge hurry to get there. Yeah, New Orleans, when you leave this world, you don't leave with... That's my cell phone. You know? My son likes to change my cell phone tones when I'm asleep. You leave the world in New Orleans with profane swagger and a party. And that's the way to go.
Yeah. I think it was great.
Okay, I ain't done.
Yeah? No? Okay.
I keep wandering away from the subject of the diary. Okay, I'll wrap it up then. So making the diary about New Orleans became a book. One night in DBA, I heard John Boutte sing an Annie Lennox song called "A Thousand Beautiful Things," and when John sings it, it's a song about New Orleans, and it is, he doesn't sing it, he renders it in fire. It is a strangled plea and an unanswerable prayer. There's not another voice like that on this planet. And there's nobody better, you know. There are guys who are as good, you know, Aaron Neville and Sam Cooke, but that became kind of the voice that made me want to make as much art and as many words about this place as I could. After the storm, the people who know this city, the people who lived here their whole lives, they realized it's, despite all the boosterism to, oh, we're going to rebuild it, it's going to be exactly like it was, they know better. And now there's a certain recognition that we must absolutely treasure and enjoy what is left of it. So the diary helps me do that. It helps me relish every moment and realize in every conversation there's something transcendent that happens, that people in New Orleans realize they're not poor, they're alive, and they live in a place where on every corner you can hear music, and that music is in their head and they have to dance to it. You have to love this place.